morning, man. I'm glad you're here. This is a service that's designed to give you a little taste of wisdom. Now, we have out in the foyer, I don't know that you tried it ahead of time. Maybe it's a little bit too heavy for you before service, but you ought to try it after service. There is a sage recipe that is really good. Now, I'd eat it right now, but then I couldn't preach the rest of the time. So I can't eat it right now. There's a card on your seats that kind of has that recipe. We want you to take that home, just a taste of sage. It's a taste of wisdom, which sage is all about wisdom. I encourage you to do it. At the end of the service, there'll be a way for you to add to the back of the card something for you to take home. Because here's what we know. The one-year Bible scripture reading is amazing. It feeds my soul. Now, I'm just curious, how many of you are up to date with your one-year Bible reading? Just kind of raise your hand. You're with us all the way. Look at all these guys. Hey, way to go, you guys. You guys are awesome. I blew it. I want to just confess to you, I blew it last week. I had 169 days straight in my streak. And somehow I missed the day. I didn't open it up, and I blew it. So now I'm on 2 days straight. Okay, that's what I am. But here's what I want you to do. Even if you're not up to date, even if you are just brand new, you say, what in the world are we doing? We're reading the one-year Bible together. And when we're preaching these messages, all of us are drawing from the scripture that you're reading every day. So you can know what we're going to talk about by reading the one-year Bible. We'll send you an invitation. Just let us know. You can join us. It's not too late. And if you're up to date, you want to make sure that you go to the Gold Creek app and that you say we're up to date. Because this morning at 8 o'clock, we sent out a notification. We have some winners that get some prizes. We are incentivizing it for you to actually read every day and to stay up to date. When you're here on Sunday and you're up to date, just say, hey, I'm up to date. End of 4 weeks, that enters you into a contest. We send you a note that you are a winner. I was standing next to someone who looked at their phone and go, wow, I'm a winner. They didn't know they were a winner. This is awesome. So you ought to do that. I encourage you to do it. Well, as I read the one-year Bible, I don't know about you. I have a list of questions that I have for God when I get there. I don't want you to pretend, I don't want to pretend that I understand the Bible completely. But here's what I do. I focus on the things that I do understand. That is plenty. And I list a whole bunch of questions. And every year when I read the one-year Bible, and I've read it for, I think, close to 25 years in a row, I've been reading the one-year Bible. And what happens for me is that some of those questions go away and I have new ones and my list keeps getting longer. And God and I are going to have this long conversation when we get to heaven. I can't wait, or it's all going to make sense somehow when I get to heaven. But I'm here to tell you that if you really just focus on the stuff you understand, you have enough. And that's what we're doing today. There's some nuggets of wisdom that come from Proverbs. And if you read Proverbs, what you see, it's a little random. They just go here and there and here and there, and it'll just one little verse that are like little zingers that you go, wow, that's true. Wow, I needed that. Wow, this is amazing. And so what we've done is we've taken these nuggets and grouped them together into some categories, and I have 3 categories I want to talk to you about today. Before I do, let me illustrate this a little bit. Why do we need this? Let me show you this picture. This picture is from our vacation. This is we were going to go to Iceland, and then because of all the travel restrictions and all this stuff, we decided not to do that. My wife and I love to hike, and so we were going to hike in Iceland, and then we just kind of weren't sure they were going to be open, all these things, so we canceled that trip, and we got a reservation, an Airbnb in Coeur d'Alene, and never stayed there, never been there, and I want to tell you, I didn't go to Lake Coeur d'Alene to wakeboard. I didn't go because it was beautiful. I didn't go to sit on the beach. I went to Lake Coeur d'Alene because I love to fish. You guys like to fish? Anyone like me? And I read about all this fishing experience. I read about there's big pikes, there's amazing largemouth bass, there's smallmouth bass, there's salmon, there's trout, all these things. I said, man, I'm going to be fishing every day all the time. Now, Audrey didn't think so, but I did. I thought, this is great. I'm going to spend a week fishing. And so what do? I mean, the very first day we get there, there's a beautiful place to be. I get in my boat. We go out. It's early in the morning. We spend our time out fishing. We fished for 2 days. 2 days. Guess how much we caught? I was so disappointed. I had hyped up this trip. In fact, I might have been just a little bit angry. And I swallowed my pride. And you know what I did? I drove into town, a little place called Fin and Feathers. And I went to get advice. And I walked through the doors of the store and I said, okay, I'm done. I fished for 2 days and got nothing. I need you to tell me what to fish with and how to fish it because I don't know. And I'm a pretty good fisherman, but I can't catch anything in this lake full of fish. You know, he said, you got to get up at 4:30 in the morning, fish from 4:30 to 8. Well, we hadn't done that yet. And so the next morning, man, he gave me this lure. I paid for some lures, and we went out. Guess who caught the first fish? Audrey. That's right. Audrey caught the first fish. It was cool. Even though it was 100 in the daytime, we had our coats on because it was actually cool at 4:30 in the morning. And then I just want you to know, she didn't catch the biggest fish. So here's the picture of the biggest fish. She wasn't with me, so I had to prove it, so I took a picture of it so I could be a good fisherman, just to let you know. And here's the great news. Because we got some wisdom from someone that knew how to do it, we were able to enjoy the rest of our vacation. And I'm here to tell you how to fish today. Not me, actually Solomon is here to tell you how to fish in this life. And what he does is he gives nuggets of wisdom that we can take and apply and live out our life. So let's get started. First category is this. He teaches us how to help the poor. Proverbs 19:17. I want you to read it with me. It's the only verse in this category. I just want you to read it out loud with me. Let's read it together. We're starting all over because you're going to join me. Here we go. Ready? If you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, and He will repay you. That's a pretty good word. If you help the poor, you're not helping the poor, you're lending to God, and He's going to repay you. Whatever you give here is going to come back to you. This is a good word. Now, I want you to notice something. What he didn't say is you have to give to the poor. What he said, if you help the poor. Now, sometimes we get it all mixed up. We think somehow if we'll solve the problem of the poor by giving them a big chunk of money. And as we know, that's not exactly the best idea at all. In fact, sometimes the worst thing you can do for somebody is give them a chunk of money. I'll illustrate that. Your 18-year-old comes to you and says, Dad, I just graduated from high school. I'd kind of like my inheritance ahead of time. So give me all your money that you're going to give me when you die. And you say, okay, son, it's all yours. What's the story? How's that going to, there's some 18-year-olds that are going, I'm in. I want that. That's a good idea. But how do we know? There's a biblical story. It's kind of a famous story. What's it called? The prodigal son. Why? Because the prodigal son giving him that chunk of money didn't help him at all. He just wasted it. And it didn't do anything but bring him to ruin. Sometimes when you give a chunk of money, that's not the answer. Now, here, I want to tell you an interesting thing. As I talk about this topic here for a minute, I want you to help think about what Solomon is saying here. An interesting situation. I don't believe that the government has the solution for the poor. I don't believe that. I believe that you and I have a responsibility to help the poor. And it is us individually involving ourselves in someone's life that will really make the difference. And giving them a chunk of money won't help. So what does it mean? Hey, let me give you an example. I listen to a podcast called Revisionist History. Every once in a while I listen to it. It helps me think differently. He thinks a little different than I do. I just love to broaden my horizon a little bit. And he had a very interesting podcast one time. And he talked about, and just recently, he talked about colleges. And he talked about how these very high-end colleges, Harvard and all these different colleges that are for the brightest of the bright, right? The really smart kids, the geniuses of the world are supposed to go to Harvard. The ones that rise to the top, the cream of the crop. And what they do is they provide scholarships for really poor kids who are really bright to go to college at no cost. Amazing. It'd be cool. Some of you ought to sign up for that. That's a cool deal. Some of you think you rise to the top, that's what you want. So the problem is all of these elite colleges, when they put out these scholarships for these very poor kids to be able to go to you know what they discover? There are not enough of those poor kids to go around to get all of those scholarships. Hard to imagine. So this podcast asks the question, why? There's too few really smart poor kids to take these scholarships. So why is that? They ask the question. I wonder if rich kids have better health because they have better food, better environment, whatever, or maybe just only smart people are only rich people are smart. You know, what's the problem? What they discovered was that in fact, in all of these elementary schools, from poor neighborhoods, middle class neighborhoods, rich neighborhoods, and they went and they surveyed all of these different schools, and you know what they discovered? There's an equal number of geniuses, really smart kids, in every neighborhood. Equal number. Apparently, smarts get handed out whether you're rich or you're poor. And some of you were shorted. And some of you were. It's awesome. It's cool. Just the way it is. So these really smart kids are in these poor neighborhoods, and so they ask the question, why do these smart kids in poor neighborhoods never get to the place where they take advantage of these elite schools offering them free tuition? Why aren't there more of them that make it up there? And it turns out they discover that in these poor schools, there's not a good safety net. When a family falls apart in a rich neighborhood and divorce and single parenting and all this stuff goes on, the kids still make it to the rich schools. But when the family falls apart in the poor neighborhood, there isn't a safety net. And those kids often fall through the cracks and never rise to their potential. They also discovered in those poor neighborhoods there's different problems that come out. There's some that ended up in jail. There's some that end up in foster care. There's some that end up with drug addiction homes. And there's really smart kids. And unless somebody comes along and provides some kind of a safety net, and they did this interview with this couple that made the decision to make it the theme of their life that they would go into these neighborhoods and sponsor these kids. They would go to these elementary schools looking for these really smart kids, and then they would make it their life duty to make sure that those kids had a safety net to get them all the way to Harvard or to some other elite school. And sure enough, they would tell one story after another of one child that was doing so well, and then all of a sudden their family falls apart and they end up in foster care, or another one whose mother is a drug addict who needs this child to take care of her, and so she chooses, instead of allowing this child to raise up selfishly, she needs this genius kid to take care of the mother. But this couple came along and made sure that kid made it. Now, here's what I'm telling you. That's what it means to help the poor. It's not always money that matters. It's sometimes your time and your talent, and sometimes your coaching and your advice. And oftentimes it is money. But here's the point. We are the solution. It's not the government that's going to solve this problem. It is each of us individually realizing that God put some people in our life and that we have a responsibility in our community to seek out and find people that we can help. I love what we do with our food bank. I love what we do in Mexico. Right now in Mexico, we have 15 churches here. You know what they're doing right now? They started all of those churches based on this fact that they minister first to poor kids who don't have good educational opportunities. We bring in tutors for those kids. Those kids get a safety net, raise them up to the top of their class so that by the time they're into their education, they're able to make it. And out of that is birthed all of our churches, and our churches are growing in incredible ways. We have 15 churches down there, all because Pastor Luis had this vision that we're going to help the poor. Not give them a bunch of money, but help them. That's how you help the poor. When I was thinking, even as a kid, I was a youth minister, and I remember I had this kid in my house, and he invited me over to dinner, and we were at a hog farm eating ham. It was just smelly, and it was different. It was a great experience. But this hog farmer was slaughtering it. I'm telling you, he was, pun intended there. He was having really good success. And he came to me and he said, I'm going to give you money from my success, and I want you to set up a fund that you will lend to somebody who doesn't have enough money to start a business but wants to start a business. And it's going to be no interest, and they're not going to know where it came from, but I want you to administer that fund. And I had so much fun helping some men and women in their businesses start businesses that could not have afforded to start. That's how you help the poor. And I'm convinced today that there's a responsibility, there's a nugget of truth today that all of us ought to take home. God's put someone in your life, some family in your life, some situation in your life, and they don't need a boatload of money. What they need is for you to help them. If you're just giving money to someone on the corner, that doesn't help them. They're going to go do drugs or do something else with it, or you don't know what they're going to do with it. But you can help the poor. That's a nugget. Let me give you a second category. Help the kids. This is kind of an interesting category because I think we oftentimes miss this, but here's the Proverbs 19:18. This is the nugget. And I have a number of nuggets in here that Proverbs has for us in this help the kids category. But this is kind of the lead one. Discipline your kids while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives. So let's say it out loud together. I want you guys to get that. Let's say it together because we're all in this together. This is a nugget we're going to take home. Let's say it out loud. Ready? Discipline your children while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives. Now, what does it mean? Discipline your kids. And while there's hope, that means sometimes your kids are hopeless. There's a point to where they become hopeless. And there's also another point in here where it says you're going to ruin their life. In other words, you have a responsibility. If you end up with a kid at your house and you don't know how it happened, I can tell you a little later how it happened, but you end up with a kid at your house, you have a responsibility to discipline them. Now, what does that mean? I tell you what it meant for me and my family. This is good for ping pong, but it's also good for disciplining. And at my house, ping pong paddles had dual purpose. Now, I know some of you are shaking, I know that, that's terrible, your parents were horrible. I had it coming. I deserved every paddle that I can. I'm telling you, I had it coming. I love that. He had it coming too. I love that. That's honest. Now, I realize that some of you have lived in a house where it wasn't done correctly out of anger. Sometimes discipline is administered in a way that it's not helpful at all. It's actually hurtful. That's dangerous. When you discipline out of anger and all that, and you may live the rest of your life saying discipline is bad, so I'm not ever going to do what my parents did. They did it wrong. Well, I'm going to tell you, every bit of the discipline I got from my parents didn't hurt me. Now, it did hurt me, but it didn't hurt me. But I'm telling you, as we grew up, there's 3 of us brothers and a younger sister, and we just learned to wear a little more clothes when the discipline came along. And Mom could never swing like Dad could, I'm telling you. But, yeah, I want to tell you, some moms here, I wouldn't want to do that. But just for a minute. Discipline. Do you do that? You know, I remember growing up, since I lived in reaction, you know, when my kids are raising up and I have a firstborn and I don't think I know what I'm doing, I'm just doing what was done to me. So ping pong paddles didn't work very well. So I remember coming to the point where I created this board. You're laughing. My son was not laughing when he saw this. We hung it on the wall. And I said, son, this isn't getting your attention, but this will. So I'm going to talk about the enforcer so that you know when it would come. And you know what the great news is? I didn't have to use this. It was awesome. Now, here's what I love. Today, you know, timeout, do this or that. There's all kinds of ideas. But here's the great news. You guys have it easy. All you have to do is this. There's no paddles necessary. There's no physical discipline. You want to get your kids' attention, just take this away. And some of you don't have enough courage to do that. And so here is the principle. Discipline your kids while there is hope. Otherwise, you're going to ruin their lives. Now, what does that mean? Let me tell you what it means for a preschooler. Just think for a preschooler. For a preschooler, what you're disciplining for is 2 things. Safety. What does safety mean? If they don't listen to your voice and follow your voice, and you say stop and they don't stop, when they're running into the street and a car's coming, you'll save their life when they learn how to stop when you say stop. Discipline helps them have safety. You have their best interest in mind. Preschoolers don't know how to run the world, even though they think they could. The second thing is respect. You teach them to respect the parents. You also teach them to respect each other. You teach them to respect authority. You teach them respect. If you aren't learning to discipline preschoolers, you may ruin their life. And you're responsible for it. Now, grade schoolers, what does it mean? For grade schoolers, it's completely different. What they need is a bit of coaching and direction. And I love what one of our staff persons said. Pastor Shauna came to me and said, hey, you realize that discipline comes from, there's another word that's very similar. It's called disciple. I like that. When we think of discipline, we only think of the negative, when in reality, discipline is about discipling our kids. And if you don't understand this, you're either going to disciple your kids or the iPad's going to disciple your kids. Or the YouTube channel's going to disciple your kids. Or some numbskull on some channel is going to take your kids down a direction that you don't want them to go, and your job is to disciple them. And what do grade school needs? They need directions. Now, I remember when my son was about 3rd grade, I remember my son coming home. He had a whole pocket full of quarters. And we were poor. We were one of those poor families I was talking about earlier. We didn't have a lot of money. There was not a whole bunch of quarters in our house. We were spending them all. He had a pocket full of quarters. I said, hey, where'd you get all that money? Oh, my friend gave it to me. Sure. I called his friend's parents. I said, hey, would you look around in the room, see if there's a bunch of quarters missing somewhere? Sure enough, there was a jar, there was a steal of quarters. He had taken them all. And I said, now you got to help me. I said, I need to teach my boy. I need to coach my boy. I don't ever want him to steal again in his life. So I want this to be traumatic. And I need your help. So I still remember, man, I remember how disappointed I was in him and how difficult this would be. And I remember saying, I pulled him aside and I said, you stole from our neighbor. You stole from your friend. The Bible says you have to pay back twice as much of what you steal. So I want you to go get your piggy bank. We're going to count out this money. And you got to give him back twice as much as what you took. So he went and took all of his money and added it to that money. And he went back to the neighbor. And this is when I called the neighbor and said, you can't go easy on him. You have to take his money. And you got to help me out. I love what the neighbor did. He brought him in and he sat him down. My son confessed to his sin, gave him all the money. And the neighbor said, son, you don't have to steal from me. If you ever need something, I'm going to be there for you. But if you steal from me, I can't be there for you. Wow. My son never forgot that moment. That's what you do with grade school. You know what that's called? That's called discipline, discipling. And sometimes we think of discipline only as the negative, when in reality, discipling is understanding what direction your kids need to go and giving them direction and helping them go in that direction. And discipline also means you discover they're really good at a sport, and so you discipline them in that sport. You discipline them in the way that they should go. Grade school. There's another category, it's junior hires. Good luck. All the hormones kick in and all this stuff goes, and you go, what happened to my grade schooler who used to like me? So what do you do? How do you deal with discipline? A lot of parents throw up their hands and give up. That's when we see most parents quit volunteering in the junior high department. They're all in preschool, they're all in grade school, but junior hires, they say, they're yours, fix them. Now, what is junior high? Junior high is the same as preschool. They need safety and respect. You need to keep a junior higher alive. And that means that when you say stop, they stop. That means they need to listen to your voice. And if you're not willing to discipline them using whatever tool you need, phone and everything else, if you're not willing to do that, you're going to ruin their lives. That's the nugget. So you've got to teach them safety, and then you have to teach them respect. One of the biggest problems at junior high level is bullying. We know that. They talk about it. Hey, listen, the government's not going to fix this problem. You are. That's your responsibility. You teach safety and respect. Then there's the high schooler. They're a different animal. By the time high school, your mind is developed in such a way that you actually begin to understand. You begin to understand and make your own choices. High schoolers are beginning to make their choices. You have to develop consequences and choices. You give them consequences and choices. And what you're doing is coaching them and directing them. And I want to say this. Don't just disengage. Stay involved in your kid's life. Help disciple them in the way they should go. And then there's adult kids, which occasionally just need to be kicked out of home. They have to learn bad words called J-O-B. Like, make it on your own. If you can't help your kids get to adult, they'll never become your friend. Your whole life changes. And when they're your friend, they'll ask you for your advice. You don't give it to them, you wait till them to ask. Powerful. There's a really good tool that I want to make available to you. It's on the app, Gold Creek app. And on the Gold Creek app is the Safe Home Sunday resources that we have. If you don't realize this today, somebody's discipling your kids. Make sure it's not somebody that you don't want to have disciple your kids. If you're not monitoring their internet, their YouTube, all their stuff, then you are missing what your responsibility is. Don't miss that. Now let's keep going. Proverbs 19:20. Get all the instruction you can, so you will be wise the rest of your life. Say it again. Get all the instructions you can, so that you'll be wise the rest of your life. What are we saying? Why do we help kids go to school? Why do we send them to preschool, send them on to school, send them on to college? It's because we want them to get instruction that will help them the rest of their life. But I want to just challenge you. Make sure that the school you're sending them to is giving them the right instruction. Be involved. If you're not voting today, if you're not voting this week for the school board members and thinking about who the school board members are and what they believe, then you're missing out on an important point. And if you're not involved in the curriculum your kids are being taught, you may not understand that right now our state has approved a curriculum that does not represent Christ's values or God's values. It's not his plan, and it's not your plan. And if you're not involved in their lives and encouraging the right instruction for them, I'm telling you, we're so serious about this that we are going to try and make a class that gives you an alternative so that when that instruction comes up, you have another place to send your kids during that instruction, because it's that important to us. You and I have to be involved. What does that mean? It means time. Who's the person that has the most influence on a kid's life? It's parents, if they spend the time. Or YouTubers, if that's where they're spending all their time. Grandparents are the second most influential people to advise. Step up and be a grandparent. Let me show you a picture of my family. This is this summer we went on. I said we went to Coeur d'Alene, but before that we went to Banks Lake. This is a picture. We do this every year. Take a picture of our family. We fish together, camp together, dry camp together. We have a blast. We only had 3 rattlesnakes we killed this year on our trip. It was awesome. But the cool thing of this picture, I want you to see this picture. Everyone in this picture I talk to about faith. And I know where they are spiritually. And I'm so honored. I'm so honored to be an influence, have the voice that I do in the lives that I do. And I want to pass on my faith. That's the most important instruction I have. Those people know what this next verse says, verse 23. The fear of the Lord leads to life, bringing security and protection from harm. Here's this powerful nugget that you take home. If your kids don't get anything else, if they need to know this, they could flunk 6th grade. They cannot make it to college. They cannot, all these things can happen. But there's one thing they can't flunk, and that's a test on faith. What they need to have is the faith that you have for your willingness to pass it on to them. What do you have? You have this incredible news that the God of the universe sent his son to die for us, to live for us, to show us how to live. He made a way for us to be friends with God, to take the mess that we make of our life and change it. And every one of us have to make our own individual decision to go in faith. They are not a Christian because they're my kids. They become a Christian when they choose to follow Jesus Christ. And this is good news. Somehow out in our society today, they call Christians, they call us people that are hateful and judgmental and all these things. They have no idea. The good news that we have is the good news for whatever flavor of the flag you are, whatever thing you are. Our church is full of people that love broken people and introduce them to Jesus Christ, who leads them through life. And it's going to cost them everything, but it's the best thing that you will ever do. That's right. We're not religious people who hate broken people. We're followers of Jesus Christ. I want you to understand this. Pass on your faith. The most important thing you'll do. Proverbs 19:26. Two more verses on this category. Children who mistreat their father or chase away the mother are an embarrassment and a public disgrace. This is really hard for me, but I want to stop here because I think some of you are sitting right here. And even as I talk about discipline, some of your kids are older. Some of you feel like a failure as a parent. And the reason you feel like a failure is because you have a kid that has gone their own way and has made decisions, and it seems like they're just choosing to ruin their life. And here's Proverbs with a little nugget. There's some kids, he says, that mistreat their father, chase away their mother, and they're just a public disgrace. That's true. Because what it's saying is that kids have choices too. We as choices, we're not about to ruin our kids' life, but we can let our kids, as they grow up, they're going to have to make their choices. And there's a reality here that sometimes we can do things right and kids can make their own choices. I don't know about you, but I've seen this to be true. There are good parents with really bad kids. Sometimes I look at the parents, I say, how did that kid, I don't understand. These people love God. They're trying to do everything they can. And this kid, I don't know why. Why is this kid choosing this way? And then there's bad parents with good kids. I look at the kid and I go, wow, you're amazing, but these parents are weird. They're doofuses. How did that happen? You guys, it's amazing. You see it too, right? Bad parents, good kids. And then there's another category. Bad parents, bad kids. That's a horrible, horrible deal. Now, I have to tell you, I found myself in every one of those categories at one point in my life. In my parenting, there's times that I was a good parent, bad kid. Sometimes I was a bad parent with a good kid. Sometimes we were both bad. It didn't matter. It's like, you can be there. Just don't stay there. Just discover where you are and also realize that not all of your choices, not everything that you can do can really completely control this kid. There's times when you just have to let the kid be who they are and pray for them every day. Proverbs 19:27. Last verse on help the kids. If you stop listening to instruction, my child, you will turn your back on knowledge. Let me say it another way. We're all kids. You don't have to have kids. You are a kid. And there's a point in your life where you can just quit listening to instruction, turn your back on knowledge. And what it's saying is that we have a responsibility. Never stop learning. Choose good. Choose faith. That's our challenge. One more category. The category is this: help yourself, which is what we're talking about. We're kids. Proverbs 19:19 says this: hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them once, you're going to have to do it again. This is true. You've met these people. Let me say it again. Let's read it. Hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them once, you'll have to do it again. In other words, get control of your anger. When someone gets angry, it's so funny. When we get angry, we think we're in more control than we've ever been. But everyone on the outside is looking at you and saying, wow, they're out of control. They lost it. When the person that's angry say, I haven't lost it, I know exactly where it is, and I'm giving it to them right now. I'm going to get my way because I'm telling you, if they're not listening to me, I'm just going to ratchet it up and get angry until they finally listen to me. When in reality, what they've listened to is, you're out of control. What makes you out of control? I was driving SeaTac to pick up my wife this week. And the way that SeaTac handles the traffic, I'm telling you, that makes me angry. And the cell phone lot, you want to get your anger going? Just try and use the cell phone lot. It's like, Who did this? I don't even understand how they could make it so bad, but they did it. And there's not even a lot of people traveling when I went. Now, here's the question. What makes you angry? Is it the traffic? Is it when somebody lies to you? Is it when somebody talks back or won't listen to you? How do you get control of your anger? You have to take that moment and give it to God. And ask yourself this question. What's the real emotion? When you find your temperature going up, never discipline out of anger. When you find your temperature going up and you realize that you're out of control, take a step back and ask yourself the question, what's the first emotion? You know, for most people, it's one of two emotions. Number one, I'm hurt. Like some of you have experienced this when your spouse lies to you. It makes you angry. And your temptation is to get in their grill and to scream at them and to do everything you can to say, that is so horrible. You're a horrible person. I can't believe I married you. I can't. And it goes up. Or you can step back and say, that hurt. That hurt me so deeply. I don't know whether I can trust you. I just don't know what to do. The same thing happened, very different response. Or sometimes when you step back, what you discover is that you have some of your own personal fears. Like you're afraid your kids are going to go in the wrong direction, so you get really angry, or you're afraid this, or you have all these fears, and you ask yourself, what's the fear? By stepping back and looking at that emotion, you begin to get control of your anger. And let's recognize this first. Don't be a hot-tempered person. Help yourself. And then the next verse. You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose prevails. My purpose has to be connected to His purpose. I want you to bow your heads just for a minute. You know, we've been talking about all these different things today. But what I recognize today is that for some of you today, the reason you're in the situation you are is we've been living by your plans. And here's Solomon that comes along and says, if you think your plans are working for you, they just won't work. It's God's purpose that's going to work for you. With your hands open on your lap, would you just simply say to God, I need your purpose in my life. Here are my plans. You take over. If you're sitting here today and maybe your parents never passed on the faith to you, or maybe you've never made a decision for faith, you're a child that's never ever found Jesus Christ, here's a great day to start. Your prayer should be simple. Lord Jesus, take control of my life. Forgive me for my mess-ups. I want to follow you. In Jesus' name. Now you can look at me. Whether you're online or in the car or here, you can text just the words, I'm in. We'll get some resources to you. If you're brand new at your faith and you say, hey, today, man, I made the decision. I really want to be in. I really want to follow Jesus Christ. Please let us know. Text I'm into that number. It's a simple tool, and we will make sure we connect with you to give you the kind of resources you need to follow Jesus Christ. One last verse. Help yourself. Loyalty makes a person attractive. Let me just stop with that line. Loyalty makes a person attractive. Have you been thinking about a little Botox lately, or a little bit of fat surgery, or maybe wrinkle stretch or something? Hey, just give it up. Be loyal and you'll look better. I love Solomon. He says, you want some beauty treatments? Start with loyalty. And then he goes on and he says, it's better to be poor than a dishonest. He said, you want to look better? Be honest. Hypocrisy kills the soul. All right, it's your turn now. It's time for you to take some nuggets home. It's time for you to write your own recipe for your life. So on the back of this card, we have some pens there for you. We're going to close this service by allowing you to have some moments to think. I want you to answer this question, these 3 questions. How can I help the poor? Are you doing anything? God's called us to do something, not give money necessarily, although I think it does take money, and I think God uses your money. How are you helping the poor? Where are you making room for that in your life? How do I help the kids? How do I help myself? We've been talking today about a lot of topics. If one of those has been clear for you and you know you need to do something, before you go today, write it down. So we're going to informally dismiss today, which means you can sit just for a moment and just write. And I'm going to slip out. I'm going to find my way back to the newcomers table. I want to meet you if you're new and you haven't met me. I really want to meet you. There'll be someone at that newcomers table. I'd love to talk to you, and I'd love to meet you there. But this is for you right now, to write your own recipe. Take something home. May God bless you as you respond.